Okay, perfect. All right. Welcome everybody to the second episode of Bike Talk. I'm Ann Groninger with Bike Law North Carolina. If you missed the first episode, you can find it on the Bike Law North Carolina Facebook page. That one is still there. In episode 1, I talked about bike law and what we do, and I also talked about a legal concept that's very important for all bicyclists to know about, and that is contributory negligence. So if you missed that, please go to the Bike Law North Carolina Facebook page and check out that video. Now, in this episode, we will do two things. First of all, we're going to meet BikeWalkNC Director Terry Lansdell, who you can see on your video. We're going to find out what BikeWalkNC does, what's going on with the North Carolina government, and what's important to bicyclists, and why you should support BikeWalkNC. Next, we're going to talk about the very exciting subject of insurance. All right, well, it's probably only exciting to lawyer nerds like me, but tonight I am going to simplify it, and I hope to get you fired up enough to check out your insurance policy tomorrow or before you ride. So let's get started. If you have questions for Terry, please put them in the chat. We'll see if we can get them answered. If you are joining us, please turn off your video. We're trying to do this as kind of a webinar, and sorry, it's not the way that we planned it. And I promise in episode 3, we will get it right. So, all right, let me introduce Terry Lansdell. Terry is the director of Bike Walk North Carolina, which is the statewide advocacy group for bicyclists and other alternative forms of transportation. Terry comes to us from, well, he's been with Bike Walk North Carolina for a couple of years after working as public policy manager for Clean Air North Carolina. He's worked with other nonprofits as well, including Trips for Kids and Safe Routes to School. In 2015, Terry received the Outstanding Leader Award from local nonprofit group Sustain Charlotte. And for those of you who don't know Terry well, you may not know that he is not just a policy wonk. He is also he also has some serious cred as a cyclist, having done 4 solo Race Across Americas and Race Across the West on a fixed gear bicycle. So without any further ado, here's Terry Lansdell, and we've got some questions for him. So Terry, just to start out a little bit, tell us a little bit about BikeWalkNC and what it is, and why should bicyclists be interested in what BikeWalkNC is doing?
Well, thanks, Ann. Thanks, everybody, for your patience this evening. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me okay. Perfect.
Yes.
So just want to touch base and let you know that Bike Walk North Carolina is the state's only statewide advocacy organization working to make it better for people to engage in active transportation. We've been around now approaching our 12th year. We started as an active transportation organization and became Bike Walk North Carolina early on in our lifetime. We've got a membership-based group, but we don't really have an engagement opportunity like local organizations do. We don't really have that bar meetup, the brewery meetup, the local Sunday rides, etc. So we are a policy wonk and a strategic planning organization. Sometimes we get in a bit too in the weeds with what we do and how we engage folks across the state, but it is important to recognize that we are working for every county and every municipality in the state at the state level. You know, why is it important for cyclists to join Bike Walk North Carolina? A lot of the work we do behind the scenes directly impacts the safety and rideability of our roads and our greenways and our sidewalks throughout the state. So if you ride a bike, you know, in years past, a decade ago, we really only had a bike and some scooters, but they weren't electrified, and we had the shoes on our feet. But now there's so many active transportation options out there, and I think Bike Walk North Carolina strives to incorporate those types of active transportation uses. As you see behind me in our logo, we try to represent a diverse population and diverse needs that are existent not only in North Carolina, but around the United States and the world. So it's important for cyclists to join Bike Walk North Carolina because we make it safer for you to do what you love to do.
Well, and you kind of answered my next question a little bit, which is, when you look at advocacy groups around the country, most of them are very bike centric. Bike Walk North Carolina obviously represents more than just bicyclists. And, is there, I guess there must be a reason for that.
There is, because we recognize that it may seem more unsafe to ride a bike in North Carolina than it is to walk or run or engage in as pedestrian activities. It's really not the case. In some places like Charlotte, you're 7 times more likely to receive a serious injury or be killed with shoes on your feet rather than with wheels on your feet. But we understand that those two go together. We're both vulnerable road users. And that's an important part of our concept of advocacy is that we are trying to protect those vulnerable road users from direct impacts with vehicles and other errant drivers that fail to yield to those most vulnerable road users. So I think that's an important part of who we are, Anne.
Okay, great. Thanks. What kind of initiatives is Bike Walk NC working on? Give us an example of some of the things that you're working on right now or that the organization's working on.
We are working on funding. We really can't make changes in North Carolina roadway networks and communities without funding. We look to the state for funding for roadway projects. Have you ever been walking or riding along in a bike lane or a sidewalk and you feel comfortable, you feel great that you have space, you feel somewhat protected if you're in a separated facility, and then all of a sudden it ends. That we need to work hard to provide funding to enhance continuous linear facilities. A very wonky term, I know. I get teased about it a lot, but it seems like in North Carolina, the only continuous linear facilities we provide at the Department of Transportation are roads. And we're trying to change that. We want to make bike lanes, bikeways, greenways, and paths, as well as sidewalks, continuous linear facilities that serve the community in much the same way roadways do.
I know as director, I imagine that you interact with other state advocacy groups around the country. What kind of things do you see going on in other parts of the country that you would like to see happen in North Carolina and that you think Bike Walk NC can be a part of?
There are a lot of fantastic advocacy organizations doing great work across the nation. But I tell you, the work that's being done in Oregon is really exemplary. And Oregon, in many respects, is very similar to North Carolina. We've got similar population densities in our larger cities. We've got this diverse urban and rural area within direct proximity of each other. Just a few miles, you can have a complete change of geography. I think that's the key there, that we can look. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to say that this is something we need to do for us and it's the first time ever. We can look to other states and other organizations doing great work. How we create networks of facilities is pretty important and a success outcome that reduces lives lost on our roads and increases safety for families of all ages to engage in active transportation. Oregon's doing some great work there. They have a great street network. They have an off-road network as well as protected facilities for bikes and pedestrians and active transportation. They also do a really great job of integrating active transportation options into their transit networks, being able to use bikes on buses and into transit. A very, very great example of how good planning, good investment, and good advocacy works really well. And I'd like that to elevate organs work here in North Carolina and help our legislative representatives to understand the impacts to our health, to our environment, and our safety.
I do want to ask you a little bit about the legislature and your work there. But before we even get into that, you know, kind of give us a glimpse of what your day to day looks like. 'Cause you do this full time, right? At
That's
least.
right. It's a
uh,
full-time job. Yeah, yeah. And
yeah.
we want to have more than one person doing this. We want to have a whole team. We've got an incredible board of 12 members across the state, and we are a working board. So we have folks doing all kinds of things every day as a volunteer, and it's critical that we do have this working board, and we have a representative working board across North Carolina. We've got members in the east on the coast. We've got members in the Piedmont, both in the Triangle, the Triad, and here in Charlotte. And we have members in the mountains as well. Um, but a typical day when the General Assembly is in session, as you know, much of the work comes in very short notice. Sometimes we get a couple of days alerts for transportation meetings and committee meetings. But when the General Assembly is in session, a lot of time is spent interacting with legislators in real time, sometimes even texting with them while they're on the House or Senate floor, trying to impact their decisions and inform them of bills and conversation that's being had. Out of the session for the General Assembly, we try to engage MPOs and RPOs in their monthly meetings, in their strategy meetings, and their technical coordinating meetings across the state. We have great relationships with CARTAR, with CARPO, with CRTPO, with French Broad River, with Wilmington MPOs. We really try to stay involved in what's going on at the regional level for those planning organizations, because they directly impact the state funding, state prioritization. So a lot of time online right now during COVID, as everybody seems to be joining, but it was there prior to COVID, and it's going to continue after COVID as well. And we urge everybody at BikeWalkNC urges you to be more involved and to join those online meetings as well as with us and with the representatives in your local area. What else? You know, we receive a lot of emails every day regarding you know, sometimes potholes, missing sidewalks, and project suggestions across the state. That's not where our focus is, and we try to direct and redirect folks with those project inquiries to the proper folks in their area. You know, we really can't dive into a missing sidewalk in front of J.R. Smith Elementary in Goldsboro when our focus is really trying to restore the bicycle pedestrian limitation funding that restricts any investment into standalone bicycle pedestrian projects across the state. So we're trying to focus on the bigger picture, and we spend a lot of time coaching up folks about how they can be more active and engaged and be better advocates in their community.
Well, it sounds like that you've been a resource to to people who have questions about individual things as well. Um, so, in terms of the legislature and your time there, what can you tell us about what's going on now? What's the next thing that's coming up that we should be interested in?
Well, a lot of, you know, if we have elections, and a lot of elections across the state for next November are at risk or are in jeopardy of not occurring because of census data and delays in redistricting. So at the General Assembly level, we're paying very close attention to any changes in penalties associated with dangerous driving. We're paying very close attention to funding for the North Carolina Department of Transportation and how they prioritize their spending on projects across the state. That's a significant part of our work and something that we do day in and day out, because it really affects the state's ability and our ability to provide safe and appropriate accommodations on our roadways and our transit network. But what we're on the lookout for, General Assembly last session considered a bill called House Bill 1225, the Education and Transportation Bond. It made it through the House, but that would have situated North Carolina in the General Assembly to subsidize through a ballot referendum upwards of $6 billion to bail out North Carolina Department of Transportation from disasters and MAP Act, a legal justice, a legal declaration that found North Carolina at fault for seizing land without providing property owners their due rights and due property values for a decade plus worth of land acquisition for interstates and highway projects. So we're really working on funding at the state level to kind of wrap it up in a nutshell. And that really where the rubber hits the road with dollars.
Okay. You know, we haven't really talked about North Carolina Department of Transportation, but I know that's an entity that you interact with quite a bit. And a lot of times I get asked about driving tests and driver's education and you know how can we teach drivers to be safe around cyclists? What's being done or what has been done on that? Where do things stand right now? Is there any driver education for how to, you know, what drivers should do when they encounter a bicyclist on the road? Is there anything like that on the driving test?
Not enough, and certainly not on the driving test. I think of the three tests that are out there, there are two questions associated with cyclists, and I think both of them deal with a signage understanding. So yeah, we were working hard at Bike Walk North Carolina. We've worked with AARP to receive a grant to begin developing a bicycle safety quiz for drivers, for bicyclists, and for pedestrians, so that we're trying to hit every sector and provide a safety quiz that helps them understand, everyone understand the rules of the road and responsibilities of the road to act and behave safely to protect lives and property across North Carolina. We also submitted a grant with the Governor's Highway Safety Bureau, a program to elevate that to the statewide level, and we hope to have that grant come on board and impact every county in North Carolina with a bicycle safety quiz to help motivate and educate motorists and cyclists and all road users about responsibilities of the road. But that driver's test is a sore spot for many people for many years now. We'd love to have that as a long-term commitment and support, but we need to have advocacy from every county in North Carolina to make that happen. We would have to have a legislative action to come in and help rewrite that manual, and that's something we would consider moving forward when enough groundswell occurs.
So if we have some listeners who might be interested in being involved in something like that, they should join us and and pitch in.
That's right. Join Bike Walk North Carolina and let us know how you can help or how you want to help with that issue. Absolutely.
Yeah, and along the same lines, suppose, you know, I'm riding around one day and I think, hey, we need to have a law about X, whatever pops into my mind. What's the best way to, you know, suppose it's this great idea, it's going to change lives and save lives and everything. What's the best way for me to go about that?
Well, first off, find out if it's a law or it's been the law is in existence in other states and other municipalities. The best way to move things forward is to show how it works elsewhere, and what it's doing to improve safety and health outcomes elsewhere. That's a first step. If there's something out there that you wish to do at the state level that you think a statewide law would help, please reach out to me at Bike Walk North Carolina, and let's have a discussion about next steps. I think one of the questions that we talk about that we haven't really touched on yet was, are we a lobbyist? But we have submitted bill language many times over the decade and many times over the past 2 years that help drive that change, whether it be e-bike laws, whether it be safe passing laws, whether it be increasing allocation of funds for bicycle and pedestrian projects. That bill language is moving forward, and we would certainly consider that. There's been some conversation and regarding the share of the road signs. There's been some conversation about the share of the road license plates. Both of those things would require some legislative action, and we'd love to have those deeper discussions with folks on this call and their organizations moving forward as well. But if you have an idea, try to find where it works elsewhere, and then let's start working together to make it happen in North Carolina.
Well, and if people are interested in a deeper dive on what's going on in North Carolina, a great place to find that out is the Bike Summit, the annual summit that BikeWalkNC puts on every fall, correct?
That's right. It's where we bring together advocates, engineers, policymakers, and passionate government officials to discuss what the best practices should be and how we can build a better, more sustainable transportation network. You can
Okay.
also visit our website, bikewalknc.org. We have a great resources page. A lot of historical reference has gone into, Anne has been a direct contributor as well. We've got some great information and great resources at our website. We hope you visit and dive into some of the assets we have there and begin adapting them to your community as well.
And pretty soon the website's going to look better, right?
Hopefully, yeah. We've had some great success in donations this year, and we hope to drive that change. So look for some changes in the coming weeks.
All right. Well, just a couple more things. Another thing that I know you do is interact with some local advocacy groups. I know you've helped a couple get started. Are you available as a resource to local groups?
Yeah, and I think you visit these groups across the state as well, promoting the legal rights of road users and active transportation, specifically cyclists. We do that as well. We try to host our summit in different regions across the state each year. And we support local initiatives and local groups as well. We have a special category for local groups to join BikeWalk NC, where we give 5 memberships to each group if they join as a group. And that allows individuals and leadership to kind of be directly involved. We work with groups in Western North Carolina. We work with groups in the Piedmont, and bicycling in Greensboro comes to mind right away. Sustain Charlotte here in Charlotte. We've got groups in the Triangle and on the coast that really participate and are active participants in Bike Walk North Carolina, and really help be the eyes and ears on the ground, and that we're able to capitalize on. So it's amazing when we get a call from, for example, from bicycling in Greensboro is, hey, we've got this state project that's going right through town, and we're not going to get the requests that we've asked for. And that's that level that we really, Bike Walk North Carolina can step in and help your work be more impactful at the local level. Not only in crafting language to submit to decision makers and division engineers, but also to help drive conversations at the regional level for prioritization on those projects. So we work with groups. I think around 40 different groups are members in Bike Walk North Carolina, and that's something I'm proud to continue to try to drive forward. So if you're a meetup group, if you're a Facebook group, or you're an actual organized 501c3 or a loosely organized group, let's have a conversation about joining Bike Walk North Carolina.
Yeah, because it would be great if you could go into the legislature and say, I'm here on behalf of 10,000, 20,000 bicyclists across the state of North Carolina, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And more importantly, to go into a legislator's office and have the group that is representative in their district be the voice for change. That's the background work that Bike Walk North Carolina really tries to support in our lobby days and our lobby initiatives as well. Hearing from district folks when you're a representative really is incredibly powerful for them. It empowers them to be more passionate and open on the General Assembly floor. It's really exciting to see.
Well, I think you answered the question about why bicyclists should become members of Bike Walk NC, and really I mean, I say this all the time, there's power in numbers, and Bike Walk NC is kind of the glue that holds all the local organizations together, or that can
That's
be.
right, Ann. Yeah, we work really hard. And I know that some people are triathletes and everybody hates triathletes. Some people are road bikers and everybody hates road bikers. Some people are mountain bikers. Everybody hates mountain bikers. Some people are greenway riders. Well, we are all cyclists. We are all cyclists. And every time we as cyclists get a chance to advocate and create safety enhancements for any kind of cycling, it is a win for all cycling. And I think that's really the key there. I think Bike Walk North Carolina, and certainly me personally, tries to incorporate every cycling need and how we drive forward. It's really important to see and advocate for things that may not be directly influential to your style of riding, but helps the community at large. We have to understand that as cyclists, we need to unify and collectively support investment in all types of cycling infrastructure. And certainly, we would hope to have that happen by joining Bike Walk North Carolina.
Um, we did get a question, and that was, new bicycle facilities and infrastructure always get the attention, but what about roadway maintenance? And that's a good point. You do get some road deterioration that is dangerous to bicyclists. Maybe a car driver wouldn't notice it. Clearly, NCDOT has cut their budgets, and it shows that with the proliferation of crappy pavement. Is that a fight that we should take on, or can take on?
We can take on to a small extent at the local level. For example, in municipalities, we have a 13-year paving cycle. At the state on state roads runs around 23 to 25 years by some estimates. With this critical funding shortfall, we have a chance, and they've actually said this in a public meeting, that the paving cycle, the time it takes from one paving to the next, could be upwards of 38 years moving forward if we don't figure out a way to change the priorities at NCDOT. Drastic cuts to the maintenance and operating budget for NCDOT is going to make it a lot worse before it gets better. So one of the main initiatives, the overarching umbrella mission for us, is to include bicycle and pedestrian active transportation design and engineer into every maintenance, modernization, and non-highway project across the state. And every maintenance, modernization, and non-highway project across the state. Critical to get that into your lexicon because it covers just about every road except for a toll road and an interstate highway.
And one thing I can add too that I learned from my work that I do is that that if you see a roadway condition that's dangerous to bicyclists, you need to report it to the NCDOT district for that area. Their maintenance is done through districts. The state's divided up into divisions, each of which has 2 or 3 districts. So anyway, if you have trouble finding the district, I can help you with that. But it's important to report that because then they have a record of it and it goes into their maintenance plan.
And get 3 of your friends to do it, because
Exactly.
that third friend is the one that triggers the response. It takes 3 complaints to make that happen. One complaint they note, 2 complaints they note, 3 complaints they respond to. So get 3 of your friends to make sure they complain about the same thing. Post it on Facebook, post it on social media. Make it easy for folks to cite that problem.
We have you've got a lot of questions, Terry. I know we didn't plan on being on this long, but you know what? We're only on Zoom and most people are missing the initial recording of the meeting anyway, so why not? You have a fan here who wants you to let us know what other groups you assisted in forming, such as Trips for Kids in Charlotte, and what did you do for CATS buses, as most bicyclists have no knowledge of how resourceful he is to North Carolina.
Well, with Trips for Kids, I helped develop their recycling program. I didn't start the program, but I came on in the early stages. And the recyclery, if you visited that at Trips for Kids, I'm very proud of the work that I did there. It's a sustainable business model and a sustainable program at this point. With Safe Routes to School, I was a Safe Routes to School uh, national partnership state advocacy organizer, and we secured the $10 million in federal funds to have the Active Routes to School program here in North Carolina. Was very proud of that grant work that I did. And a small thing that I did in the background was to ensure that bicycles were included on buses, on every bus, on every route in Charlotte during a time when we were battling conversations that said we only want to put bike racks on bus routes where there are needs or people are already using, but without bike racks on buses, there's no way to prove that. So we have to change philosophies, we have to change mentalities, and that's the same truth that we have today. Now that's over 20 years old, that effort. But we had that today in the General Assembly, that people believe that bikes don't belong on the road. People believe that bikes aren't used for transportation; they're just used for recreation. Those are fallacies of political will that we work hard to change and overcome. Thank you for that, though. Mhm.
Yeah. And then we have one more question here. What's the main roadblock in getting North Carolina to do away with the contributory negligence law? We know nobody likes this law, but what can we do to convince lawmakers to change this? And I talked about this in our first bike talk about a month ago. Yeah, Terry, you and I have talked about this a lot. And, I think contributory negligence is something that's those of us on the side of right have been fighting for quite some time. And anyway, why don't you tell us what BikeWalkNC's position is on that, or goal is with respect to that?
Well, it's a large lift. It's even a larger lift than some of the other things we've spoken about earlier in this meeting. Contributory negligence is very acute for cyclists, and I think Anne is much more expert on the impact of contributory negligence. The mere presence, your presence, means you may have contributed to a crash, is completely abhorrent in my mind, and that the loss of opportunity to recover damages from that because of the law is again abhorrent in my mind. However, it contributory negligence doesn't just affect us, and this is where we have to work beyond our own sphere of influence, beyond our own echo chambers of cyclists, because it affects uh, CAFOs, commercial agricultural farming organizations. It affects union workers. It affects a lot of other industry, a lot of other individuals, even drivers. It affects drivers. So they can become our allies in this fight. We have to recognize that contributory negligence, and being one of the 3 or 4 minority states in America that still have that law in place, is not a good place for North Carolina to be. But it will take not only, I think, judicial action, but legislative action at the highest level. The governor, the House, and the Senate would have to sign off on removing that from the statutory books. So it's a real challenge, but it affects everybody who's involved in a crash or gets hurt or has an accident in this state. And we would definitely welcome a larger diverse initiative to attack this problem head on. Certainly we could represent our needs and our position with the cycling and walking community.
Yeah, it's also something that the North Carolina courts can, which you guys can't do anything about, but the North Carolina courts can fix contributory negligence as well. So y'all
Yeah.
need to watch out for my judicial recommendations. So
That's right. And absolutely. Anna publishes some incredible voting guides during voting season, and I urge you to reach out to her and Bike Law to learn more about how to change your voices into votes every opportunity during the election cycle.
but the follow-up question was, what's the first step? And I think the first step is reading your legislature and knowing when the right time is to introduce something like that. And I don't know if you agree with me, Terry, but I think it hasn't been the right time for a few years. And there was an effort a number of years ago, and it got close and then failed. So there may be a time, but I don't think the time is right now. I'm not the, yeah, anyway.
The best thing you can do is to reach out to make it a monthly effort to call your local representative, your House representative, your Senate representative at the state. You can visit Bike Walk North Carolina to learn more, or you can go online to find your representative. And just ask them a simple question. Keep your calls to 3 minutes. Ask them one question or speak about one topic and say thank you as soon as your 3 minutes are up. But if every 2 years we have to educate new people. So if you haven't done this in 2 years about contributory negligence, it's time for you to pick up the phone or write a letter or send an email and ask them what contributory negligence is, and tell them how it impacts you as a cyclist and as an active transportation user.
That's great advice. And always keep things professional.
That's right. Be nice.
Yes, be nice.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want our listeners to know about BikeWalkNC?
I want to thank you for your patience tonight, getting through the technical difficulties, and we'll try to have this online. But we really need your support at Bike Walk North Carolina. We're doing great things, not only here in the state, but at the federal level as well. We just finished up our leads as the state advocacy organizers for the League of American Bicyclists National Bike Summit. And we had an incredible turnout in which we contacted all but 2 of our North Carolina contingency in the House and Senate during that conversation, and talked about the importance of funding and prioritization of active transportation projects here in North Carolina. So join us if you haven't, donate if you can, and participate moving forward in Bike Walk North Carolina.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your patience. The rest of you don't know it, but we spent quite some time before this trying to get this video to go live to Facebook, and it just wasn't having it. So here we are. Hopefully many of you got to join in anyway.